Hi, and welcome to another edition of What's the Story here on the People Chronicles. My name is Joe Painter, and our guest this afternoon is Patty Mahlon. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm good, and it's absolutely delightful to see you. It was nice. We had a quick catch-up, and you and I worked in the same not the same building, but for the same company a while back, and then I hadn't heard from you for a while.
Yes, when I worked for the Reading Eagle Company and I worked in the internet division, I was sick with, at that point, an unknown illness that turned out to be a genetic condition called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It affects roughly 1 out of 3,000 to 1 out of 5,000, depending on who spins the numbers, but it's a rare genetic disorder. Usually takes 9 years and 3 doctors to correctly diagnose it. And once I was diagnosed, I was immediately placed on a lung transplant waiting list, where I waited until July of 2016 when I was finally transplanted. So,
wow. So I knew you were sick, but I didn't know what it was, and perhaps at that time you weren't sure. The diagnosis process was still going on. And then just a few months ago, I heard from you, and you told me you had a transplant, and I was just shocked. So take me through your feelings. What was happening during the diagnosis period where something's wrong and you don't know what it is, and then finding out what it meant?
Before I became truly symptomatic, I had a lifetime of very strange and unusual health issues. To the point when I was in my early 20s, someone actually, a physician did say, you probably have something genetic that we just don't know how to test for yet.
Really?
So I kind of always knew there was something not quite right, but couldn't put a finger on it. I became symptomatic when I was 30, but no one who's 30 wants to think that they're facing some sort of life-threatening illness. So,
what were the symptoms?
The symptoms were very sudden and extreme shortness of breath. I had some skin issues. I believe it's called paniculitis, where a very small injury can suddenly turn into something kind of horror show-ish.
Right.
So, many intestinal issues. Well, not that this is completely terrible, but I could never handle alcohol. Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is actually a liver disorder. And it manifests either as liver disease, usually in infants, or as lung disease, starting usually in your 30s or 40s. So.
Okay, because now you just said liver disorder, but you didn't need a liver.
No, luckily. Although there are some very, very unlucky people who are affected both with their livers and lungs, I ended up with the lung version of the condition. I did not end up with the liver version, at least so far.
It's interesting that a doctor said to you, you probably have something genetic, we just don't know what it is. I was just listening to a podcast this morning, actually, on the way to work, and the quote was from a doctor, we don't usually see it unless we're looking for it. So did they start looking for something in your journey?
In truth, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is one of these conditions I think many physicians learn about in passing when they're in medical school, but because of its rarity, it's not something that's in the forefront of their minds when they're diagnosing patients. In fact, there is a foundation whose purpose is to raise awareness among the general population, but really it's the physicians that need to have that a little bit more in the forefront of their minds when they are diagnosing patients. So it's not that I hold it against anyone.
No, I didn't mean that at all, but it's an interesting observation that you would say that. When you got the diagnosis, when it was determined, this is what's causing all of these problems with your health, and the reality set in that your lungs were shot, did you know right away, I need new lungs?
Yes, I was one of those, when I was finally diagnosed, and the irony was I had just taken a job at a travel magazine,
Oh no.
And it was kind of my dream job, and I went to Mexico, and it went very badly. So when I came back, I kind of had my fingers crossed and said, okay, powers that be, if you can get me home in one piece, I promise I will finally go to a doctor. And I had to go to a doctor crying because they were still saying, well, you might have asthma. I was like, no, this is not asthma.
Right.
I've been living with this for 10 years, and I can't. When I worked at the Eagle, I could not walk one of the hallways. So at that point, I knew that this had gone to a point. So when I was finally diagnosed, it really was, you have 13% of your lungs left, and we need to put you on a transplant list immediately. Travel magazine, we're going to have to work on getting you on disability because you can't be working right now either. So yes, pretty much my entire life as I knew it up to the age 39 was completely upended and turned upside down in the span of about 2 hours. So
you sitting here are the personification of doing this, being an organ donor. And we're all asked that, do you want to do it? But we rarely get an opportunity to meet somebody who's impacted because we checked yes. And that was you.
Yes. And I will say that I am very, very happy. When I was 16 and first applying for my driver's license, I had family members who shared with me urban legends such as, if you choose to be an organ donor, you're less likely to be resuscitated after a car accident, that you will be left in pain because that's part of the procedure of procuring organs. And none of that is true. It is really just folklore. It's not a painful process. You won't know, but you will be giving life to many people, not just your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, your pancreas, your corneas can bring new sight to someone who's never seen before. I will also say that there is a phenomenon among people who are transplant recipients, survivor's guilt. It helps a lot when you were an organ donor, because many donations are cadaver cadaver donations, which is how lung transplants work. So kidney donations can be living donations, liver can be a living donation, but somebody has to pass in order to donate organs.
Did you experience what you call survivor's guilt?
Sure. I think a lot about the person who donated the lungs to me, and although I am 8 months out and I'm still in recovery.
Wait a minute. You only had this 8 months ago?
I had this 8 months ago in the summertime.
Patty, you look absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking this had to be a few years back.
No, I am still in the danger zone, but so far I have done very well.
So you feel good?
I feel good. When you are, going into a transplant is nothing that anyone does lightly. Physicians will often describe it as you are trading one set of symptoms for another. I take 20 different pills every morning, and
for organ rejection or
organ
to prevent
rejection that? And also supplements because I'm now at risk for premature osteoporosis. 60% of transplant recipients end up with type 2 diabetes because some medications affect your blood sugar. So I have lucked out on some of these things. I have some nerve damage. I have muscle weakness, mostly because I was in a wheelchair for the last couple years I was listed for a transplant.
How long did you wait?
I waited 4.5 years.
Did it have to be a match, a blood match and all of that?
It's a blood match, but it's also a tissue match. And the tissue matching for my in a good way is much more complex than it was even 6 or 7 years ago. I think there are 1,000 different variations now that they look for.
You mean the abilities of what they can match? Okay.
Yes, the transplants are only getting better. Outcomes are growing longer.
Were there false alarms like, We have a match, we don't have a match. We have a match, we don't have a match. Did you go through that?
No, and that is very uncommon. Most people, they just call them, rough runs, dry runs,
What does
false
that
alarms.
mean?
It just means that the vast majority of people who are listed for any organ transplant get at least one dry run, whereas they get called, and you usually have to wait 6 to 8 hours while they test the organs to make sure that they are viable, and then over 50% of the time they're not, and the people are sent home. So I am very unusual in that I did not have a dry run, but I was called on Sunday afternoon, on Father's Day actually, and they basically were, if you can get here within 2 hours, we can get you.
Where was here, in Reading or Philadelphia?
I was Reading, and I was transplanted at the University of Pennsylvania. So
you had 2 hours?
Yes.
And you knew for several years that you were on call?
Yes.
2 hours?
I could not be more than 2 hours away from the center, so
wow.
Unless I wanted to be delisted. And there were all sorts of ups and downs. At one point I had some strange things on an x-ray that could be cancer, but because I was too sick to have a biopsy, they had to wait it out for several months, so I was delisted. It's a very up and down emotional experience being listed for a transplant.
Yet you're wearing an extraordinary smile. That's the first thing I saw when I saw you again, and it graces your face. Is that gratitude? It's
gratitude. It's when you can't walk and you are trapped in a wheelchair on oxygen for 4 years. Just the ability to walk up Penn Street to come to your office is a little bit of a thrill. So, at this point, both for the sake of the donor who lost her life, and I am the continuation of her, I just want to make the most of the time that I have. Lung transplants typically have a survival rate of 5 years. It can be longer, it can be shorter. So living day to day is kind of the best approach, unless you want to kind of be sad all the time.
We often hear every day's a gift, right? And it becomes kind of a hackneyed phrase, but you give a whole new perspective to that. And you said the donor. Now, have you met the donor, the donor's family? Do you know anything about the donor? Is that a choice you make when you become a donor?
It's a choice that's made both by the donor's family and by the recipient. There is a wonderful foundation. It's the Gift of Life Foundation in Philadelphia. In fact, each region in the country has its own similar foundation that sort of plays as a middleman between the medical institutions and the donors and the donor families. The way it works is that I am invited to write a thank you note to the donor's family, and after a certain period of time, not to be cryptic, but just to make sure, the first 6 months are very touch and go. The first entire year is considered.
And you're not
very
a year
touch and
yet.
go. No, I'm not at a year. So you write a thank you note, and it is passed along to the Gift of Life Foundation, and then they contact the family. And if the family wants to learn about the recipient, then it is up to them to accept the notice and then contact me if they want to. So I wrote my letter after Christmas. I have not heard back yet, and I don't know if that's because the Gift of Life Foundation is still holding it or if they needed some time to process. But I may never hear from them. I may hear from them.
Based on what you said, though, Patty, when you become an organ donor, and if you're in an accident or something like that, there are many parts that can go on and be donated to people who need them. So ostensibly that family could get multiple.
They absolutely did. I am positive they did. It is very rare. Lungs are an incredibly difficult organ to procure. Kidneys, liver, even heart transplants, believe it or not, are actually still very difficult in terms of.
But easier than
technique.
lungs?
They have a better prognosis than lungs and are easier
Oh.
to procure. So part of the reason why lung transplants are a little trickier than others is because your organs are typically only exposed to what you put into your body, whereas your lungs are exposed to the world around you.
Oh.
So
Environmental.
you pass somebody who has a cold, that you are going to be inhaling that bacteria. So that's why it's a little trickier. Hopefully they will continue to make advances in anti-rejection medications, and there's talk of cloning, and so there, the long-term outlook is good, but at this moment I had about the best care that you could have.
You're a trailblazer. You are. So I believe, beating the odds and showing the success rate and making a difference.
Well, I hope so. And if not, at least I want to make sure that what I do have, I kind of feel like this is a second life. In video game terms, this is my bonus round. So I want to make the most of it. So.
And you are. You're writing right now?
I am writing. I'm still doing a little web work. I'm gradually trying to move back into working. I really enjoyed my career, so that is kind of my ultimate objective. I'm not going to put so much pressure on myself that if it doesn't work out, it's okay. But yes, I write liner notes and occasionally do audio commentaries for really bad 70s drive-in movies. I work for a few music-related websites still.
Using the name Patty Mahlon.
Using the name
I
Patty
didn't know if there was a
Mahlon,
pseudonym
yes.
at this point.
Well, sometimes I use my maiden name, which was Patty Breen, so
Okay.
it kind of depends on the project. But I'm trying to stay busy, and again, offering support to other people that when you go through a transplant, your rehabilitation group, your physical therapy group kind of becomes like your graduating class.
Oh.
So I've been trying to put effort into both trying to lift up people as they have setbacks, and keep in touch with the people who are also blazing trails and doing really well. So.
I have to thank you very, very much for sharing this story.
Well, thank you.
It's
Thank you for
hugely
having me.
impactful, and that's what this organ donor means. And you made it real for me. I am an organ donor as well, but I don't know that I've ever connected all of the dots and the impact that means to somebody who's waiting for something. So that's a beautiful thing.
What surprises me is that nationally, only slightly more than 50% of all Americans choose to be organ donors.
Really?
And sometimes I wonder if that's because when you do go to apply for a license, they kind of ask you, are you sure? Are you really sure that you want to be an organ donor? So let me just say that there really is no reason not to. In terms of just pure altruism, you are giving life to not just people like me, but 5 or 6 other people. Many of them are young. I think, in the times when I started to feel sorry for myself, to see and I'm calling them kids, but they're in their 20s. And it's amazing that children born with cystic fibrosis are even living to their 20s. But when you see these young people who never really even had a full chance of going to college or even finishing high school without tutors and whatnot, it really makes you realize that this is one of the most giving things you can do as a human being. So the next time you apply for your driver's license, just check that box. Don't give it a second thought, because that choice can save not just one life, but many lives.
Because somebody did. We're talking with you, Patty.
Exactly.
Thank you so very, very much, and very best of health and blessings in the future.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Appreciate
It's great
it.
to see you.
Want to know more about who's doing what in Berks County? Check out the stories on thepeoplechronicles.com.
These community stories are made possible in part by BCTV, Susie Ray Design, Queen City Family Restaurant, Lamar Advertising, Heidelberg Family Restaurant, Reading Air, Lions and Hole, Peanut Bar, and Kutztown University.